Welcome to the Gathering Place. I'm Ben Bookie. I'm joined tonight with Talora Bookie and with Holly Wilkes. We'll introduce her a little bit more later. We just wanted to say welcome. Our friends Ken and Tom are ill or gone tonight, so it's the three of us. But tonight we're going to talk about an important topic, and this is something that we talk about a lot this time of year, and that's having hope for the holidays. And that's the mission here at the Gathering Place, is to offer hope as we talk about emotional, mental, and spiritual well-being. And so we're going to talk about all that. We're going to talk about what to do, how to survive the holidays, how to get through those, how to have good times. We're going to open with prayer, and then we'll talk a little bit more. So, Father, we just thank you that we can be here, Lord, as we're entering the holiday season, Lord, the holy days, Lord, and we just pray that this would be a fruitful discussion, that we would give hope to people who maybe are struggling with grief or loss this year, or who are having family conflict and don't know how to deal with that, or just other stressors of just feeling overwhelmed or trying to do too much. I mean, there's so many things, Lord, this time of year. And so we just pray that that people would find some peace and hope tonight, Lord. And we just thank you for all that you're going to do. Amen.
Amen.
So, as I said, we're joined by our friend Holly. We kind of threw this on her at the last minute because we like to do that. So,
this is the second time in the past week.
It is.
Yep.
So Holly will be in 10 months will be our intern for counseling. So we're looking forward to that. And so you might be seeing a lot of her. So she's just kind of getting maybe a preview of what her internship might be like. I don't know. So maybe she won't be our intern after 10 months. I don't know. But so we're glad that you are here. Is there anything you want to say to introduce yourself?
I can just, well, my name's Holly, and I am a mom and a wife. I have 10 kids right now. Do foster care and adoption, so it keeps our house incredibly busy and chaotic, and that's about it. I'm glad I'm joining for this topic because the holidays are my favorite time, and I'm a little bit obsessed with Christmas. So I've been watching the movies and listening to the music, and I think the last count I have 21 trees up right now. So this is right up my alley.
Mm-hmm. So we, of course, if anybody knows us, we of course also love the holidays and Christmas. We don't have anything up yet though. So
you're behind.
I know we actually are behind. I usually start the beginning of November and we start decorating, but we're a little behind.
Ask him when he started listening to Christmas music.
Oh, if I know Ben, then it started in about September.
Mm-hmm. Pretty much.
I'm thinking that he's just been doing it behind my back.
Okay.
Like this whole year. I'm just gonna say that.
Sometimes the best way the best way to boost your mood is to listen to Christmas music.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's true.
Yes.
That's true.
Happy.
It is happy. So, but even with all of that, I know one of my favorite Christmas movies is Christmas Vacation. I was actually watching that a little bit today. And, now that, I used to watch it when I was younger with my dad. Dolores always like, your parents let you watch that movie?
You missed a few things when you were younger, didn't you?
I did, which that's good. So, but, in that movie, of course, you see him trying to create this perfect Christmas and all of that pressure that comes with trying to have the perfect family holiday. And I think a lot of us put that stress on ourselves. And I think, so that might be a good place to start our conversation is, what do we do? Like, how do we manage this? How do we not put that pressure on ourselves, yet still have a holiday that's meaningful, that we, have joy and all of the things that come with that. And not just Christmas, of course, Thanksgiving, right? And all the other things that are going on. So
But one thing that I've found, especially as a mom with, I've got from 4-year-old up until 27-year-old and all different ability levels and kids that are mine biologically and kids that I've adopted and kids that may be going home soon. So, I've got this wide variety of kids and we try to make everything magical. And Josh and I, my husband, we we almost stress ourselves out sometimes and we look for all these perfect moments and we've got all these things going on and then every weekend is we've got this, we've got this, we've got this, we've got this. And what we found is that sometimes our kids just want to sit home and watch a Christmas movie, or we do it probably sounds terrible, but we do Christmas karaoke and each one of us take one of the parts of the 12 days of Christmas or listen to the music and everybody sings along. And sometimes they prefer that rather than the big gestures. And here we are stressing ourselves out over all these Christmas activities and making everything perfect and up to the standards of everybody else to post it online. And when in reality, they just want to spend time with you. And we've gone overboard and tried to make everything just absolutely perfect. And there's no need for that.
Mhm. I think it's an important point, because I always, when you think about childhood, I already mentioned like we always watched Christmas Vacation, right? Like those are the things I remember. I remember like driving around and looking at Christmas lights. You know, I was having this conversation with somebody, and they're like, "Well, how many Christmas presents do you actually remember from childhood?" And
Oh,
they're a handful, right? Like I remember my first Lego set, things like that, that were, became really important to me because I still love Lego, right? There's
right.
got some up, in my office here. I got them at the office at the church. I got them at my office in Belding. I still have all my sets from when I was a kid in the attic. People are not allowed to touch those. But it is those little things. It's just being together.
Well, one of the things, my parents divorced when I was 7, and um, we were we were pretty poor. My mom, I mean, we always had what we needed. We always had food. We always had a warm place. Those things weren't even in question because that's what my mom focused on. But
Mhm.
the one piece I remember the first Christmas when we lived in Indiana, because we had lived in Michigan, they divorced, so we moved to Indiana. And a church came to our house. And sorry,
That's
sorry
it.
about that. Thank you. But a church came to our house, a church group, and they had purchased us gifts. They wanted to know what we wanted. And I, of course, in the early 80s, wanted a Cabbage Patch doll because that was the
Mhm.
craze. But they gave me, it's like a pumpkin head kid or something like that. And I loved it. I loved it. And I would carry it with me. Its clothes were permanently on, so I didn't ever never lost the clothes. And then it was, kind of in a straight, its legs were straight. You never could bend them. But I am so thankful for those times in my life because it made you think what was really important. I still have a necklace that my mom had special made for me, and she used, she would save money so that she could get us gifts.
Mhm.
And I still have that necklace. The jewels that were on it came off. It's a heart. I still have an ornament that my parents
Oh,
had. My dad was a pastor or a minister when I was young, so we didn't have a lot of money there either. And so those little things were very important to me. Not that gifts, the gift giving really mattered. I think it was more of the the cost. Does that make sense? The
yeah.
cost behind it. Because the cost wasn't about the price of it, but the cost for my mom to purchase me a gift, the cost for my mom to receive that type of charity, because that's hard. It's a prideful issue,
Oh, absolutely.
but she wasn't like that. So sorry.
I think that gets
Yeah.
to, part of, when we think about like, what is even the point of the holiday season, right? I mean, why do we
Mhm.
celebrate Christmas? Why do we have Thanksgiving? Um, and as believers, of course, right, we're called to be thankful. And of course, Christmas, celebrating the birth of our Savior. And but we lose sight of that. And when we think about even just this idea of even just giving, right, and like focusing on what is actually important, and and it's kind of that cliche, but focusing on the real reason for the season becomes important. And we can focus on that by doing things like, if we have that ability to give to other people who are in need, maybe get them a real Cabbage Patch doll,
My
right?
brother bought me one for my birthday a couple years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Him and his wife got me one.
Yep. A vintage one, no less.
Yep.
Oh, very cool.
Right? It's not an antique yet, but it is vintage.
Give it a few years.
Yeah.
But it is. And but celebrating just even things like that, right? I mean, that's a sibling thing, but finding things that are actually meaningful. We're so busy, right? And Holly, you were talking about that, of trying to do these big things, and what's actually meaningful in this, and really trying to learn to focus on those things. And I remember that they're always like, keep it simple, stupid, right? Kiss.
Yeah.
Right. I always leave off the S, right? The second S, right? It's like keep it simple. And how do we do that though? Because there's this urge, maybe even within us, but pressure from all around us to be big and do more. And gotta have, Clark Griswold lights. We already talked about Christmas Vacation. We have to have all of those things. We have to have the biggest pile of presents under the tree. We have to do all of these things that really just stress us out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And causes some problems. I mean, I've heard of people going into debt over having the best Christmas presents. And I mean, all of us are guilty of wanting to get the best for our kids, or, wanting to be impressive, and we end up causing ourselves some problems. Then you've got kids who are just expecting bigger and bigger every year, and you're paying on a credit card for a whole year over something that has been shoved in a closet. So it's definitely something to pay attention to, like how much bigger and more perfect can you make things, and how much pressure are you just putting on yourself to, do all these things that, are just, they can be just temporary.
One of the things that Ben and I decided to do for our boys, I mean, obviously they're adults now, and I just want to make memories with them. I just want to spend time. That is important for me. And obviously our oldest, most people don't know, so I shouldn't say obviously, but his birthday is on Christmas.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah. He was born right on Christmas. And so we always celebrate his birthday first. Like, we do a birthday breakfast, and Grandma and Grandpa Bookie come, and we just, all the kids are there, and we make, usually it's gravy and biscuits. We have to do so. We're from a Southern family, Holly, you know what I'm talking about. So we make gravy and biscuits, and we just spend time together. But Ben and I also decided we want those memories. And so during the year, we choose a vacation spot, and then take the kids, and we all go on vacation.
That's a really good idea. And we've been kind of leaning more towards, for like birthdays and Christmas, leaning more towards experience type of gifts and trying to incorporate that more. And we still have some young ones, so toys are still a thing. And the middle school boys, it's all about video games and all of that. But we want to make experiences and things they'll remember. We've like to vacation. And, that's the kind of stuff that when they're looking back over the year, that's always something that they bring up is, oh, remember when we did this in this place? And
Mhm.
so I think experience gifts are a good way to go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And even before we were doing the trips, I mean, of course we still buy them a few gifts, but even before the trips, like we always set a limit on how much we would spend, and setting boundaries around those sorts of things, and trying to stick to that is really important. Because of course, I mean, our oldest, what still is into video games, and but he's an adult, he can buy his own, right? But
Right.
you know, so like it used to be, like that was one of his larger gifts, but um, making sure that we just keep those boundaries in place, whether it's spending limits, especially spending limits, not going into debt, like Holly was talking about. But there's a lot of other boundaries around the holidays that we might need to set. And, that's we could spend hours, days, maybe even talking just about this topic, but it's really important, because when we think about things that get us stressed out, it's probably our lack of boundaries.
I think so too. I have boundaries with my, Amazon driver. Not really. No, Amazon's here so much. I feel like I'm on a first name basis. But no, I think boundaries are important at the holiday time. It's so easy to, agree to do things that are not really a priority. And I'm notoriously bad for that, as I'm here after, just a couple hour notice. But no, Josh always gets on to me about the fact that I will, agree to help everybody and go do this, and I'll join in on this, and I'll volunteer for this. And the 4 kids are homeschooled. So, it's always joining in for gingerbread house making with the homeschool group, or let's go to this Christmas party. And then I've just let my boundaries down, and we end up overbooked and stressed out. And you know then you're just letting everybody into this space that should be just so, like this should be the time that we're doing this, and instead I've just blown open our boundaries. And so that's something I definitely need to focus on this year.
Yeah. And I think that those kind of things too is when you um, sell yourself. No, not sell yourself short. What's the word I'm looking for? When you overextend yourself, that you do kind of lose that hope for the holidays. It makes it more of a chore or more of a job, instead of it being about, okay, what's this holiday really about?
Right,
Being
you get so
thankful.
busy doing that you forget
Yep.
about being. I
Mm-hmm.
I know it's kind of, like the cliche Bible verse for it, Mary versus Martha. And, like, are you going to sit there at Jesus's feet and worship him and, remember all the things that he did for you? Or are you going to be so busy making everything, doing everything, wrapping everything, that you forget, like, the hope of the season? I don't want to use the word magic of the season, because, that's a little Santa-ish,
Mhm.
but
Or
the hope.
Disney,
Yeah.
Disney-ish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, when you think about, boundaries, I mean, thinking about our time and protecting our time is so important. And how do we do that in a way that is, meeting our needs, because it is important, right? But also meeting the needs of those around us, especially when we have children or others in our family, because we get worn out easily, and we keep trying to go and go and go and go, and so when you think about like Thanksgiving, well, maybe you've got like 5 family Thanksgivings to go to. Some people have a lot of extended family, and
Mhm.
maybe you have to set some boundaries around that and just say, yeah, I can't do 5. Maybe I can
We
do 3.
we did that recently because we were hosting we were hosting like my whole side here. And then my sister Shreya for Thanksgiving was hosting their side. And plus we were doing like we do a sibling movie night, and, all these, like, where it was every weekend. And Ben and I, and also my sister-in-law, we all decided, because my sister-in-law is the one that hosts the Easter event. And we're like, we can't do it anymore. So that's why we chose to do a summer event. So then everybody could still come over. There's, the yard. So there's tons of room. But all of us being inside our house, we just have a tiny farmhouse. So then it became stressful too, because,
Yeah.
we started to it just felt like it was a lot. But I love having my family. I love spending time with my nieces and nephews and having us all together. And so that was really hard for me to make that decision and to create that boundary. But the other thing I think we need to talk about tonight too is like being part of, like a broken family, because there are so many people out there that their kids have to go, between two homes. So they get the kids are probably fine with it, for the Christmas, because they're like getting
2 Christmases.
Yeah, plus step parents, or, whatever you want to call, like if it's just the parents, other half's parent, you know what I mean? There's like all these gifts now.
Mm-hmm.
But, to the parent that's at home, and Holly, if it's okay if I share, because like your mom, you came from a broken home.
I did.
So I don't know if you want to talk a little bit, just not, you don't have to go into detail if you don't want to.
Oh, no, it's fine. I did come from a broken home, and I have an incredibly close family. So my mom and my siblings, we're all very close. We are loud and obnoxious together, and I love every second of it. And I've got some incredible nieces and nephews. So, but my mom did struggle when we were younger. But she's kind of one of those rare people. She never complained in front of us. She never let us know, like, we had a lower income. I mean, the woman worked like 3 jobs and put herself through school and babysat every kid that she could find, just to provide for all of us. And we never realized it, and on top of it, here's this woman who has been wronged, and we honestly, we were never made to feel like we had to choose between my parents. She took us Christmases, Thanksgiving. We always went to my dad's parents' house, and then we'd go to my mom's parents' house. And we so often, like, she would just go with us, and she was always welcome to go there. And we were all together, and nobody ever made it uncomfortable or awkward. And it made all the difference, because she could have really focused on the fact that she was all alone, and how dare he leave us. And she never did that. She's amazing. She's my hero still. And you know in my house, we don't have a broken home, but we do have kids who have other families. So I understand in a way, like, it's not a broken home, but I understand how it feels to have kids going between 2 different homes, and feeling like you've got we make it a point, we never ever ever speak badly about the biological parents in our home, because that's not fair, and they're good people. And right now, the girls that we have, their biological parents are incredible, and we get along really well. So um we make it a point to do similar to what my mom did, and never make things contentious, and never bring that up. But it does get a little difficult balancing the schedule, and who goes where and when, and who gets Thanksgiving, who gets Christmas morning, and how are we going to work this out? And on top of it, we've got another foster mom involved in the situation, so it's balancing 3 schedules. And so
Mhm.
that's
Well, and
That's
that it makes it so. I mean, it's a challenge, right? And add just a stressor on top of
Yeah.
just other stressors. And one of the things, like that's worth re-mentioning again is just like not, especially with the families, whether it's because there's other biological parents involved or step parents, whatever it is. I mean, keeping as much as you can, as much as is within you, right? I mean, that's Romans 12. My mind is blank. 12, 17, 18, right? If it is possible, as much as is within you, that's what's within your control. Live peaceably with others, and that even includes the people you don't like, maybe people who are cantankerous or just difficult. You can't control them. You only can control you, and your job is to be a peacemaker, not a peacekeeper. It's different, right? But a peacemaker, and it's fruit of the spirit sort of thing. So how do we keep the peace, and how do we, because guess what? Like I mean, I always think about, excuse me, our kids, you know, until they were both adults. I mean, biologically they're not mine, but they are mine, right? And but their bio dad, we invited him to every Christmas,
wow.
every birthday. I mean, obviously our oldest, his birthday and Christmas were the same day, but he never showed, but that's all right. Like we made that decision that he would be invited. And as
You
well
could come to
as
their open houses.
he did come to their graduation open houses. So,
Mhm.
and if that's all he could manage, that's fine. So, but obviously, the kids would be disappointed sometimes about that, and then we had to manage that. You know, I remember one year, he did say, "Oh, I'm going to be there. I'm going to be there."
Mm.
And Talora and I had already planned ahead about, all right, like how are we going to manage this because he's not going to show up, and which he didn't. And when we think about keeping boundaries at the holidays, how do you have a plan for this, right? And if you want to have healthy boundaries, you've got to have a plan. If you want to have, you're not going to have a stress-free holiday.
No.
It's not life. But how do you plan ahead for this? And part of that is, like we talked a little earlier, right, about like setting your spending limits. It's a boundary. It's a plan, right? And but also like how much time do I want to spend on certain activities? And because people are going to ask you to do all kinds of things. And how do you start saying no?
I have a hard time saying no.
Yeah.
Josh and I have started discussing ahead of time before we go in somewhere. Just because we have very different ideas of how long we should be places, and with
Hmm.
being a bit more, a lot more extroverted than he is, um, I tend to want to stay. We get there, and even if you're like, oh, we've got to go to this, and I'm still talking away and yapping in the corner, and he's like, come on, let's go, let's go.
Hmm.
So we've started setting limits for time frames. So before we walk in somewhere, aside from giving the kids the speech, don't you dare embarrass us, and you better get along. It's always okay. How long are we staying? What time do we need to leave? How late can we actually stay? And you know, let's figure out when we need to leave and make sure that that's the point that we're leaving.
Hmm. We do the
So
same thing. And you know, I'm the one that's always ready to go. Usually, not 100% of the time, but
yeah,
It's
so
I've
not.
seen you run
Yeah.
out of here a few times then.
Yeah. It's
I'll,
not always a true statement.
I'll be like, not always, but I'm usually, but most of the time, I'm the one like tapping Talora on the leg, right? That's our little signal, like it's time to
It's
go.
not ours. It's not
It
ours.
is.
It is.
She
I'm
she
like,
does this, she does the same
Right.
thing to me, but so because I do it to
do the
her.
eyes right.
Mm, yep.
Mhm.
but it is important.
Aren't you ready to go, honey? It's time
Yeah.
to
go. Like, oh, I got tired, right? We try to send all these signals, but it's important to have a plan for those things, right? And just like, all right, like 2 hours, like that's it, and then we're done, and you might, be gracious and let it go 3, but you have to have that plan. And even thinking about, like, all right, how many events are we going to do? Dolores was talking earlier about, like, it seems like every weekend there's something, and
Yeah.
that gets exhausting too, because sometimes you just want to be home,
Yeah.
and just watching the Christmas movies, right?
Warm, wrapped up in a blanket.
drinking your coffee.
Yep.
Mhm.
But you need to take those times out during the holidays. You need to be able to, and I'm going to call it a need, because we do need to be able to shut down and to just do some self-care. Maybe
Yep.
self-care is drinking some, hot cocoa or coffee, as we all love, and just sitting in front of the TV and watching a movie with your husband or with your kids,
Mhm.
singing karaoke, right?
Right.
Days.
Got to do the karaoke. No,
I love it.
I've never been one to put much thought into self-care, and this year it has shown fantastically, as I have found myself more stressed out in the past year than I have been ever, and especially with starting my master's program. And I just, I found that I'm like, but what about me? And it's driving everybody crazy. I know it is, but I found that, without some form of self-care, I find that I'm just way too stressed out. And this year seems so much more manageable because I've been taking that time to come into the bedroom and sit and watch a movie, or get up in the morning a little bit earlier and, make my coffee instead of like guzzling it as I'm running to the van to run kids around, just taking that half hour to sit still and go over what I'm doing for the day. And so
Mhm.
I found that self-care is pretty important.
Yep. And a lot of Christians don't like this idea of self-care. It's kind of like it's a dirty word.
Yeah. Yeah, I
But
think it is.
it's really biblical. We definitely have talked about that. I mean, it's what we do here, right? But
Yep.
I think there's a lot of hope to be found in learning to love yourself or love your neighbor as yourself.
Mhm.
It's really talking about, like, well, how do you love yourself? How do you care for yourself? It's not a selfish thing. That's different, right? Um,
Right.
it's actually selfish to not care for yourself, because you're going to run yourself into the ground. You can't do everything,
Mhm.
right? And Jesus himself, right, would get tired and would just disappear from the crowds,
Mhm.
be on the other side
That's
of the
why I was
lake,
just getting ready to look up. Yeah.
right? Um, and so it's important to take that time for rest. I mean, God himself ordained from the beginning in Genesis, right, taking a Sabbath day,
Yeah.
because God himself rested on the seventh day of creation. And it wasn't like, oh, like, well, we got to work, 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 work. And then we kind of ignore this idea about Sabbath and resting. And did God really need to rest? No.
It was a
Right.
demonstration for us.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That
Um,
is going to be my inspiration for the week. I'm gonna tell the kids every time they drive me nuts, I'm gonna make like Jesus and go take a nap.
yep. Well, that's why I was just going to read. So Matthew 14:13 says, when Jesus heard about it, he withdrew from there by boat to a remote place to be alone.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then yeah, he saw the large crowd, right? But um this one isn't the one version. Well, it once again, it was in 14 and it's 23. After dismissing the crowds, that was after feeding the 5,000, says he went up on the mountain, and he, referring to Jesus, by himself to pray. Well into the night, he was there alone.
Mhm.
So,
Well, and
yeah.
I think when you think about this, I mean, again, like thinking about the reason for this season, right? Jesus is the reason for the season. That's our holiday cliche that we've made.
Right.
But Sabbathing, resting, spending time with God, like, it's that Holly referenced it earlier. If you didn't catch it, right? We're human beings, not human doers. So,
Mhm.
we have to be, but learning to be still so that you have that time with God, and not just in praying, right? But praying isn't talking the whole time. I think we think that like we have to pray and just talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. And I'm like, if you don't shut up, you're
Yep.
not gonna and listen, you won't hear from God. And that's part of the importance of resting and just being still sometimes so that I can actually hear.
As I've been going through my the counseling program, you kind of make the connection of, like the role that you play in the counseling session, and you guys are counselors. So,
Mhm.
one of the things that my teacher always tells me is be quiet. They're like, you have to be silent to allow somebody else a chance to speak. And I am a notorious talker here. So here I am thinking, like, oh, I'm just gonna be talking the whole hour. And I've learned the importance of silence and letting somebody else, and it's still uncomfortable, but I'm learning the importance of just sitting and
Mhm.
being quiet and listening for somebody else to talk. And you know the Bible, when it's talking about Jesus, says that he is a counselor. I
Yes.
believe. I can't tell you the reference, but
Yeah.
he's
Mhm.
sitting and listening, and we're supposed to be like him and just sit and listen. And maybe instead of always talking about, here's my problems and I need you to fix this, and magic genieing, God, maybe we should just sit and be silent sometimes and be still and listen, because you never know what you're missing out on by
Yeah.
running your mouth all the time.
Mhm.
Yeah.
We find silence to be so awkward, especially in our culture. And we need to actually practice the art of silence. It is an art. It's uncomfortable. If you aren't used to it, I mean, Holly's experiencing this now, but Delora and I both had to go through this about just learning to be quiet and being okay with the silence in sessions. But let's learn to do that in life, right? And just be okay with the quiet. Turn off the TV, turn off the music, turn off everything, and being alone and quiet with just what's going on inside of your head, inside, but what's God speaking to you? I mean, how do we really get comfortable with that though when we're not used to it?
Right. Well, I think for me, I've shared, growing up in a family, I'm second of 5 kids, 5.5 years apart between the oldest and youngest. Constant noise,
Mhm.
constant noise. TVs were all like, we had a couple TVs. They were always on. Um, there was always noise. And then, I have 2 boys. So I had my first boy when I was 19. And then by my early 20s, I had Jacob or Philip. And so it's just like it was always this constant noise. So when the kids were with me, constant noise. Or, I even have a problem like if I get in the car, I feel like I have to call somebody on the phone, or I feel like I have to, yeah, I feel like I have to talk all the time because you have this constant noise. But how do you shut that down? How do you quiet that? And I think that's really being intentional in that space.
Yeah.
So,
Mhm. Yeah, that was the actual word I was just thinking. So, so much of this is being intentional, and even it's about having a plan, but like this isn't a plan like here's every minute scheduled out. Like this isn't what this is, right? This is I need to make sure that I am intentional, that I'm planning for time and space of quiet.
right.
I'm making sure that set boundaries around my time, around my activities, around my spending, um, and really focusing on that, and maybe scaling things back, right? Like, you know,
Yeah.
it, we always have to be so big about everything, but maybe it doesn't need to be, right? If I'm going to be intentional about it, but what's actually really important about all of this? What is the memory maker in this season with, especially when you have children, or um but even your extended family, like what are you going to remember, like what's meaningful to you in this time, and taking time and space, making sure you go to church. Like it amazes me is, like how many Christians they either only go to church on Christmas, or they just don't go at Christmas because they're so busy.
Yeah. Or you don't want to go for the first time at Christmas.
You know, right?
Right.
Um, but there's at least two other topics that we got 20 minutes or so still to talk, but um, one about what about the when we're experiencing grief and loss in the holiday seasons, what do we do with that? And also, what about conflict in the holiday season? Like, what do we do with that? So, let's start
Well,
with the grief and loss, and
that's what I was, yeah, that's where I was going to go because, I lost my mom in 2010 and holidays were so big for her. That's, you know, once
Yeah.
again, we're from a Southern family. We spend time together with family because family is very important. Um, my Aunt Irma Jean, she was from Banner, Kentucky, and she told me, she says, you need to know your people. And I think it was, I shouldn't say I think, it was very hard after my mom passed because she was so big in our life, such a big present. I always say that, your parents tell you or teach you how to live with as an adult with them still in the world. They don't teach you to live as an adult or even just to live without them in the world.
Yeah.
And I think that was the biggest thing for me is like, okay, what do I do with this grief? What do I do with this the empty place of, that presence? First of all, I depended a lot on God because the grief journey is even if there's other people sharing in it, it's an individual. We grieve. It's just the grief is one of the loneliest feelings when you lose, like especially a mom or a dad. Both my parents are gone. My dad passed in 2011 um, in December. So
Mm.
he passed right before, and that was the only time he was really around in our lives was around Christmas time we would see him. And so it just became even harder, trying to get through the holidays. So what do you do? I mean, you talk about your loved one, right? We talk about them. We bring up those memories. Oh, remember when? Oh, mom would have loved that. Or I mean, dad would have, whatever.
Mhm.
Um, I think it's hard too, like my sister lost her daughter at 7. She was
Oh.
7 weeks old, so she didn't even get a first Christmas with her.
Mm.
And so every holiday, every birthday, my sister's like, she didn't get that. So what do you do? You have
and
to
I
create new memories, right?
Mhm.
Sorry, Ben, go ahead.
I was to say, I mean, again, it's like recognizing the grief, and we like extremes as human beings. Like, so either we go and get too busy to just
Mhm.
try to like numb the pain, numb the grief, or just to be able to ignore it, or we isolate, right? And finding like, okay, like right now, sometimes this is a hard question to ask, but like, right now, what is it that I need to do in this space of grief, whether it's the death of a loved one or, Holly, you've got children who've been removed from their parents, right? And this may be their first Christmas that they're not with, bio parents. And so they've got that grief and loss, and helping them to navigate that, or, people have lost a spouse, or even just lost a job or anything. Like, I mean, there's all kinds of losses out there, but, paying attention, like, all right, what is it that I actually need to do in my grief and loss right now? And, it's such a, and it's not what I want to do, right? It's like, what do I need to do? Like, what is going to be healthy and helpful in this moment, right? Because I might want to isolate, and I know that that's not what I need to do. But maybe what I need to do is be intentional about, what, I'm going to go to the candlelight service at church and be with people. I'm going to go to, this grief support group because they're doing, the memory Christmas tree. And maybe that would be meaningful. Or just finding those things that are healthy and helpful, and even hopeful, since we're talking about hope for the holidays, even in our pain, of making sure that we do that. And also being there for, maybe we're not experiencing that grief and loss necessarily ourselves, but being aware of those who are.
Yeah, I think that's important. I personally, I've had my own grief, and I've lost loved ones, and different things in my life. So I understand grief, but what I think is so important is understanding, other people's grief as well. There are so many people who are hurting, and this time of year just exacerbates that. You may feel alone, and we just did a seminar yesterday about suicide and how to help people who've been dealing with that, and how to help people who've lost loved ones that way. And one of the things we talked about was, just being there for somebody and letting them tell their stories, and listening to what that loved one would have been doing, or what they did at a previous holiday, finding some way to memorialize them, or to just simply show up and be an ear and watch a movie with them, or bring a meal. There's so many things, especially if that grief and grief goes in waves. It's not going to be just, oh, it's their first Christmas without them and next year's going to be better. It's not going to be better. It's going to
Mm-mm.
be different. It's not going to be better. So keeping in mind, being mindful of other people and what they're struggling with and going through, and being that person for somebody who says, I may not understand exactly how you feel, but share it with me and let me be that person. And without taking, we talked about, like taking on too much, but without taking on too much for yourself, reach out to that friend who's lost their parent, or be there and go help somebody who's, experienced a loss and needs just an extra hand. It's a couple
Mhm.
hours.
Yep.
Well, and
And
one of the things like I've suggested to people, maybe it's because they were grieving the loss of their not through death, but grieving, because Ben was talking about the conflict piece, but grieving the loss of not having family because they had to, you know, create that boundary. And I suggested, why not do a Friendsgiving? Why not get a group of your closest friends and still celebrate? Still
Mhm.
celebrate the holidays. Okay, your bio family can't be there, but create new memories.
Mhm.
And sorry, Ben, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Nope, that's fine. So, I think I was just going to piggyback a little bit on what Holly said, because, she referenced, we had the the workshop yesterday we did on, suicide in the church. And but one of the videos was from Rick Warren, and he talked about, show up and shut up. Even,
Hmm.
the nicer way is the ministry of presence, and not Christmas presents with a T, but being there, presence, right? And I'm like, wow, like I'm like, that's really good. Just
Yeah.
it's a ministry just to be there with people.
It is.
And but on the flip side of that, right? Like, what if you're that person that you have isolated or you've just kind of lost contact with people? Because it takes a lot of work and effort, right, to maintain relationships, like, especially like, if you're, it's hard. I know it's hard to believe, like, I'm pretty introverted. Like, it's hard to maintain friendships for me just because I'm like, wow, it's a lot of mental effort and physical, and so being intentional about that. But maybe you're just that person. I don't have anybody, and so how do you even in this season now create community for yourself, because we all need that.
Mm-hmm.
I was actually going to ask you something similar, like how, I'm so used to the chaos and the noise and the loudness, like Talora was talking about. But
Mm-hmm.
how do you address somebody who doesn't have that, And I won't name names, but I do, know several people who their parents are older or their parents have passed and they don't have siblings, and life has gone on for all of their friends, and they're just kind of still in that spot of, like upcoming grief, or the grief has happened, or you're by yourself and you don't have many people, and I can imagine how hopeless that would feel. So how would you two, as seasoned professionals here, how would you help that person aside from just being present with them?
Mhm. And I think part of that is, some of us during the holidays that, might need that extra support. We tend to get a lot of referrals during the holidays because it's so much, or people come out of the holidays and they're like, holy cow, like that was just so much. And like, now that the new year started, I can focus on me. But um, finding, again, it's like, all right, maybe it is like I have to, I'm going to push church, but like, where else would you want to be, right, when we're in the season of celebrating
Mhm.
Thanksgiving? Where else can you go and just be so thankful for what God has done, even if we don't feel it, right?
Right.
We can still know he's done good things. Spending time, celebrating, Jesus' birth, and just being joyous and hopeful for what he has done and what he is going to do. Maybe that's what we get, right? But maybe, if you are involved in a church, are you involved in like small groups and having that core group of people? Maybe it's not going to help you right now, but try to get involved in that and start building relationships. Maybe it is reaching out to somebody that that, oh, I've lost contact with this person, but let me just at least make a effort, right? I may not get anything from it, and we have to be prepared to deal with that, right? They may have their own things, they might have their own hurts from something, but doing nothing is going to get us nothing,
Right.
right? But it takes some vulnerability and courage, really, to be able to do that. And sometimes you need that support. So it doesn't have to be a therapist, but maybe there's somebody out there who will support you in doing that. And
Yeah.
but it is. And so it's a scary thing, but we do need people. And excuse me. So she's coughing, my throat's going, but
Right.
it's that season. So
Yeah.
really quickly, because I know we're gonna run out of time, and like this is a huge topic, but like, all right, like conflict. What do I do when I know there's gonna be conflict? And I was reading an article, and this psychiatrist, who obviously is not a Christian, because was like, oh, if you can't be around your family because they voted for Trump, just don't go and tell them why. As a believer, that's likely not going to be the correct response, whoever you voted for, right? I mean, politics are a big deal. There's all kinds of other conflicts besides just politics that occur in families. So what's the correct response as a believer to conflict in the holidays?
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just thinking, I know like there are some families, I was talking about like that boundary you have to create. And there's a toxicity there that you can't be around because obviously it will poison you. So I think too, it's also, so creating that boundary. And then maybe it's like if you still want to go and spend time with your family, if you can start, feeling that conflict or feeling that pain, because when things are
Mhm.
starting to escalate, and maybe take a break, step outside, walk away from that conflict, or maybe it's not even engage in it, and just say, hey, I think it's time for me to go.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, I think some practical things would be, like take responsibility for your side of what's happened. If it's something that, you've gotten in an argument with somebody, take your responsibility and then, you know, try I've had conflicts in the past, everybody has, and, you know, owning it and saying, "Hey, let's work this out before the Thanksgiving dinner" might be a good option. And the other thing is this is a time of, we just had the election and people are not happy. I've seen a lot of posts about removing yourself from my friendship or from my friends list, or I'm not coming to Thanksgiving with people I don't want to be around. And I think that there need to be some boundaries, and I think that some conflicts, like some people have felt this so deeply that it's probably not a good time to get together with people and really ruin relationships. But there's also a point to saying, like, I respect you, and let's just, let's leave this topic and just know that I love you, and we
Mhm.
may not agree, but I can respect you, you can respect me, and
Yep.
we can try to come together and not let it ruin what has been a very long relationship. If you've got brothers and sisters who feel differently, or their vote landed on the other side of the aisle than yours, then just we've been through so much together. Let's not let this ruin a relationship. And if you feel like you can't handle it, then maybe it's a year that you limit how much you're around people.
right.
Mhm. Yep. And I think taking personal responsibility for that, right? Like as a therapist, it's not because, you voted for Trump or you voted for Harris, like I can't be around you, right?
Right.
We talk about doing like I statements, right? Like, and what's the real issue is like I can't handle my emotions about it right now. Like
Hmm.
I I don't have I don't have the emotional reserves for it. So like I may have to set those boundaries, biblically, right? Like it's up to us to live peaceably as much
Hmm.
was within our control. I can't control what other people do, but I can still set
Yeah.
boundaries around that. I can go and be like, "Hey, like, Uncle Joe, like I just can't talk
Yeah.
about politics right now." We are, of
But the
course,
turkey
not
side.
talking here, but we're not talking about, right? Well, you have to go hang out with, Uncle Billy Bob. That might be culturally insensitive. Uncle Bob, we'll go with that,
Right,
right?
Howard?
Who sexually abused you as a child, like you don't have to do that, right?
Mm-mm.
That's different. But um, but as part of this is, people can have different opinions on things. I don't have to discuss it,
Mm-mm.
right?
That was
And
one of my thoughts too.
but having a
I keep that
plan
in
ahead of time of like how and knowing exactly what you're going to say, just keep it simple, right? Of like, hey, like I'm not comfortable discussing that. And then you might have to walk away because, Uncle
Right.
Joe might be all about like, "Ah," right? Well, whatever, that's fine. You can be all about that, but I don't have to talk about it.
Mm-mm.
My brother-in-law, like at family holidays, like we would, after about 2 hours, disappear to Bigby and get coffee. All right. So, um, and that's, like, because he would get overwhelmed being there and it was just too much, and so I'm like, yeah, let's go. I'm all about
Yeah.
coffee.
Right.
Um, so I'm like, yeah, let's take a break from the chaos and the noise, even though like he grew up in chaos and noise, but like, um, but I needed that as much as he did. So sometimes it's having that person in place and like, hey, like I'm gonna be there, but I'm gonna need some support to deal with this, right?
Yeah, that's a good idea, is to have that designated person that you can
Mhm.
run to, like, hey, I'm overwhelmed. I need your help getting out of this situation real quick.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yep.
And
We got
we talked
4,
about
3 seconds, 2 seconds, 1 second.
Yep. So
Oh,
we've talked about this idea of conflict before, but I'm sure it's going to come up again in the next few weeks, just because it's such a needed topic, and it's so much breadth to it. Um, Holly had mentioned we did do the workshop on suicide in the church yesterday. Our next one actually is conflict in the church, and that'll be in January. So just because we're thinking about it, I'm sure it's going to come up anyway, because that's kind of where our thoughts are going to be. But
mhm.
it's also that time of year where a lot of conflict happens and it doesn't always feel good. And so there are things that we can do, and having, again, it's really being intentional about what we do and how much of that we do, and setting good boundaries around that, and knowing things that, you just need some one liners, right? And practice them ahead of time so you're ready to
Yep.
say those, of just like, and it can be just like, I'm not comfortable with that. Or just learning just to be like, no, no is a boundary, right? Um, my no always sounds like, that sounds awful. Right? I actually say that, right? Like if I don't want to do something, like, that sounds awful. But figuring out how do you set those boundaries, and because people, like, I mean, they want to spend time with us because
Yeah.
it's the holidays, and why would they want to spend time with me?
Who wouldn't want to spend time with all this chaos?
Right?
I know. I
I know,
know.
you know.
Yeah.
Um, so, but for all of us, I mean, it really is that thing of like, oh, we can only do so much. We only have so much time and energy.
I just wanted to say this. The reason why I was like 1 second, 2 seconds, or 3 seconds, 2 seconds, is because I thought the program would end at the 1 hour mark.
Oh,
It
Yeah,
you
doesn't.
have to cut
it
us off,
doesn't.
and we've
Yeah.
got 2 extra minutes going.
Mm-mm.
I know. Look at that.
No.
That's the reason why I don't want people to think I was weird.
That's
Just
from
letting you
that's from the
know.
old days when Ken had us on Zoom, and like the free version would limit us.
Oh, okay.
So we
Okay.
were always like, so Taylor's got all kinds of some trauma maybe about that or something. I
Yeah,
don't know. I was like,
I know.
Next week's
getting my
topic,
stuff in my stuff.
Dolores trauma.
I know. So, but it's a good time it
Yeah.
is a good time to wrap it up because we were at that time.
Yeah.
But as always, like, for everybody who's watching, we thank you for watching. Leave comments. You can send it to any of us. Even if you send them to Holly, she will let us
Mhm.
know. All right. You can
Yeah.
leave comments on the YouTube. Ken's Facebook got disconnected, but he will be posting this to his Facebook. You can leave comments there. You can contact us on our website. It's quiescounseling.com, QUIES. So our phone number or email is all in there. Even if you have a question for Holly, you can send it through there because she can be our intern. So we know how to get a hold of her. All right. So, but even if you have topics you might want us to talk about coming up in the future, happy to hear those things. We're always looking for ideas. And also, if you found this helpful, share it.
Yep.
Share
Like it.
share it, right? Share and like it,
Share.
right? And if you'd like
No,
to send me
like
$500, I will send you a special message. So, but we do appreciate all of the people who watched this, and
Yeah.
we appreciate Holly for stepping in to the last
Oh,
minute.
no problem. It was
So
fun.
we might see you again at the last minute. Who knows? Maybe we'll actually plan it ahead one of these days.
Right.
So, and then, but hopefully we'll plan on seeing everybody next week. But Taylor, do you want to close this with prayer?
Yeah. Heavenly Father, we are so thankful. Lord, we're so thankful that we know you, God, and that we can talk about you freely. And God, we just pray for everyone that has been listening to this. And we just pray that you will give them peace during this holiday season, Lord, that you will remind them of who you are and the gift that you have given us, Lord, which is your son. And we just thank you, God, and we just we give you all the praise. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Hi,
All right. Thank you
everybody.
guys for letting me join you.